He struck me in the middle of the church hall, between rows of blood donation chairs and pristine white registration forms. Fluorescent lights blazed overhead while everyone pretended not to see. But he didn't know that punch activated a chain of evidence I'd been quietly collecting for months. I used to stay silent to keep our family from tearing apart. That day, I stayed silent to tear apart his lies. And when the needle finally pierced skin, the only person who didn't see who had rolled up their sleeve was him. My name is Avery Quinn, and I've spent the last decade documenting other people's lies for a living. Compliance and internal investigations at Northbridge Medical Systems taught me that paper trails never lie, even when families do, especially when families do. That Saturday afternoon in Redwater, Ohio, I just finished a 12-hour shift auditing equipment inventory, the kind of mind-numbing work that keeps medical devices from disappearing into the black market. I should have gone straight home to my studio apartment on Maple Street. Instead, I drove to St. Gabriel's Church, where the quarterly blood drive was underway, thinking I'd help with registration for an hour or two. Redwater used to manufacture steel. Now it manufactures excuses. Empty factories line Route 42 like broken teeth, and half the town scrambles for construction work that pays cash under the table. The other half, like me, clings to the few corporate jobs left at the medical campus north of town. I was organizing consent forms when Mason Harrow walked in. My stepfather moved through the church hall like he owned its shoulders back. Work boots leaving dried mud on the linoleum, that gold pinky ring catching the light. Behind him, my mother Lila clutched her volunteer clipboard, eyes fixed on anything but me. "Avery," he said my name like it tasted bad. "Need to talk to you." "I'm working." I kept sorting papers. The medical questionnaires had to be in order A through M in one pile, N through Z in another. "Working," he laughed. That harsh bark I remembered from every family dinner since he married my mother 8 years ago. "Always working. Aren't you too good for family?" The church hall hummed with controlled chaos. Nurses prepped donation stations while volunteers guided donors to folding chairs. The smell of antiseptic mixed with coffee from the welcome table. Normal, safe, public. Mason pulled out his phone, swiping to a document. "Need you to sign this. Co-signer for some equipment. Just a formality." I glanced at the screen. Loan application. Harrow & Sons Grading LLC, the company he'd registered with his brother last year, though his brother lived in Florida and hadn't spoken to him since 2018. The loan amount made my stomach drop $67,000 for a commercial truck and excavator. "No." "What do you mean?" "No." His voice rose enough that the elderly woman at the next table glanced over. "I mean, no. I won't co-sign anything." I turned back to the forms. "Ask Mom." "Your mother's credit is tied up in the house." "Then ask someone else." His hand slammed down on the table, scattering registration forms. "You ungrateful!" He caught himself, smiled at the elderly woman who was now openly staring. "Family helps family, Avery. That's what decent people do. Decent people don't forge signatures." The words slipped out before I could stop them. The smile vanished. "What did you say?" I should have stayed quiet. Should have remembered we were in public. That scenes in small towns become legends. That my mother would pay for my defiance later. But 3 months of monitoring suspicious invoices at work had sharpened my instincts, and something about his desperation felt familiar. "Nothing. I need to get back to—" His hand caught my shoulder as I tried to turn away, not gently. "You think you're so smart. College degree? Fancy job? Looking down on people who work with their hands." "Let go." I kept my voice level, professional. The compliance officer voice that delivered bad news about federal violations. "Or what?" "You'll file a report." His grip tightened, fingers digging into the spot where my neck met my shoulder. "Everything's a report with you. Everything's evidence." The donation stations were 20 feet away, nurses drawing blood, volunteers handing out juice and cookies. My mother had disappeared behind the registration table, fumbling with boxes of latex gloves. Nobody would intervene. Nobody ever did. "Mason, please." I tried to pull away. That's when he hit me. Not a slap, A closed-fist punch that connected with my shoulder joint and sent me stumbling sideways into the table. Registration forms flew everywhere. The elderly woman gasped. Someone dropped a tray of supplies. The sound echoed through the hall like a gunshot. My shoulder exploded with pain. Wrong angle, wrong position, something had popped out of place. My white button-down shirt, the professional one I wore to weekend work events, tore at the seam. "Sign the papers," Mason said quietly, straightening his flannel shirt. "Or next time won't be so public." He walked out like nothing had happened. Around us, the blood drive continued. Nurses kept drawing blood. Volunteers kept smiling. My mother finally looked up from the glove boxes, her face a mask of practiced blindness. I gathered the scattered forms with my good arm, shoulder screaming, shirt torn, and professional dignity in pieces, but I smiled, because Mason Harrow, construction worker with dreams bigger than his credit score, had just made a crucial mistake. He'd hit me in front of witnesses. The drive home took 17 minutes. I counted each one, breathing through the pain, keeping my left arm pressed against my ribs. The torn shirt flapped in the breeze from the cracked window. By the time I reached my apartment, the adrenaline had worn off and my shoulder felt like ground glass. My emergency medical kit sat under the bathroom sink, a habit from years of living alone. I'd learned to stabilize a dislocated shoulder in college after a climbing accident, though doing it one-handed was new. The hardest part was typing the incident report with my left hand immobilized by the makeshift sling I'd fashioned from medical tape and a scarf. Incident report. Personal file date. Saturday, March 18th, 2023, 4:47 p.m. Location. St. Gabriel's Church, 1847 Water Street, Redwater. OA. Witnesses, approximately 30 to 40 individuals present at blood drive. Injury suspected anterior shoulder dislocation from direct blow, perpetrator Mason Harrow. I saved it to my encrypted folder, the one I'd started 3 months ago when I first noticed irregularities in certain vendor invoices at work. Old habits from investigating medical equipment fraud had taught me to document everything, especially if it involved family. My work laptop sat on the kitchen counter where I'd left it after my shift. I shouldn't access the Northbridge system on weekends without cause, but Mason's desperation nagged at me. Construction contractors sometimes appeared in our vendor database. Just a quick check. The Northbridge portal loaded slowly on my apartment's cheap internet. I navigated to the vendor verification system, typed Harrow & Sons grading into the search field. 3 results appeared. 3 invoices submitted over the past 2 months for site preparation services at our warehouse expansion project. Total amount $24,500. My good hand trembled as I clicked the first invoice. Digital signature at the bottom, A. Quinn, compliance approval. But I'd never seen these invoices. Never approved any work by Harrow & Sons. The signature looked familiar, because it was mine lifted from some other document and placed here. The metadata showed the invoices were created on weekends when I wasn't working, submitted through our external vendor portal that didn't require 2-factor authentication. I screenshot everything, saving copies to my personal cloud drive and the encrypted folder. Then I logged into my River and Pike Credit Union account, something I rarely did since most of my bills were on autopay. A notification banner flashed, recent application under review. My stomach dropped. I clicked through to the pending application section. Home refinancing application. Primary applicant, Lila Harrow. Co-applicant, Avery Quinn. Loan amount, $340,000. Property address. My mother's house on Shaker Heights Road. My signature appeared on page 4 of the PDF, dated 2 weeks ago. Another document appeared below it. Commercial vehicle loan. Harrow & Sons grading. Cosigner, Avery Quinn. This one from 6 weeks ago. Already approved and funded. They'd bought a used F-350 with my credit. I pulled up my credit report. The inquiries were all there. Dings against my score I'd built so carefully since college. The truck loan showed as an active account. $37,000 of debt I'd never agreed to carry. My phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. Family meeting tomorrow. You'll sign the excavator loan, or I'll make sure Northbridge knows about your side deals with vendors." I almost laughed. He was threatening to report his own fraud, too desperate to see the irony. I screenshot that too. Then I called Rhea Dalton. We'd stayed friends since our biomedical engineering days at Ohio State, though she'd gone into IT infrastructure while I chose compliance. She answered on the third ring. "Avery, it's 9 at night. I need help building a data room. Legal-grade documentation storage." "What kind of trouble are you in?" "The kind that requires chain of custody documentation and timestamp verification." She paused. "Your stepfather." Rhea had met Mason exactly once, at my mother's birthday dinner. She'd spent the rest of the night researching whether Ohio was a one-party consent state for recordings. It was, "Can you help? I'll set up a secure repository tonight. Blockchain timestamping, tamper-evident logging, the works. Whatever you're documenting, it'll hold up in court." Court. The word sat heavy in my chest. But Mason had drawn first blood literally, and now I could see the pattern. Fake invoices at my company, forged signatures on loans. He wasn't just desperate, he was systematically criminal, and he'd made me complicit without my knowledge. I opened a new document, typing carefully with one hand. Evidence log. Mason Harrow. Financial fraud. Item 1. 3 fraudulent invoices submitted to Northbridge Medical Systems. Item 2. Forged signature on F-350 loan via River and Pike Credit Union. Item 3. Forged signature on home refinancing application. Item 4. Physical assault with witnesses. Item 5. Text message containing blackmail threat. The shoulder pain had faded to a dull throb. Tomorrow I'd get x-rays, file a police report, contact our corporate legal team. Tonight, I'd build my case. Mason thought he'd beaten me into submission in that church hall. He thought fear would make me compliant, that family loyalty would keep me quiet. But he'd forgotten what I did for a living. I investigated liars, and I was very, very good at my job. Sunday morning arrived with fresh bruises blooming purple across my shoulder. The Redwater Police Department occupied a squat brick building between the defunct bowling alley and a payday loan shop. I walked in at 8 a.m. sharp, medical records and printed screenshots in a manila folder. Officer Janet Holcomb took my statement with practiced neutrality. Small-town cops know the difference between bar fights and domestic violence, even when the victims are adults. She photographed my shoulder from multiple angles, documented the torn shirt I'd brought as evidence. "Will you be pressing charges?" she asked. "Yes, assault and battery for starters, but there's more." I laid out the financial fraud documentation. Holcomb's expression shifted as she reviewed the forged signatures, the fraudulent invoices. This wasn't just family drama anymore, this was felony territory. "We'll need to coordinate with the prosecutor's office," she said. "Financial crimes cross into federal jurisdiction if they involve interstate commerce." "Northbridge Medical Systems ships across state lines," I confirmed. "And the loan applications constitute bank fraud." She gave me a case number and a victim's advocate pamphlet I didn't need. Next stop, Fulton County Prosecutor's Office, housed in a restored Victorian that looked cheerful despite its grim purpose. Assistant District Attorney Marcus Washington reviewed my evidence with the focus of someone who'd seen too many family crimes. "The assault gives us probable cause for immediate action. The financial crimes will take longer to prosecute, but with this documentation," he tapped the folder, "we can build a strong case." "What about protecting the evidence chain?" I asked. "Your friend's blockchain solution is admissible. We've used similar systems in cybercrime cases. Keep documenting everything." Monday morning, I called in sick to work and drove to River and Pike Credit Union's main branch. The original building from 1923 still anchored Main Street, though half the storefronts around it sat empty. Marla Ortega, senior loan officer, met me in a conference room that smelled like old carpet and new anxiety. She pulled up the accounts with efficient keystrokes. "The commercial vehicle loan was approved 6 weeks ago," she confirmed. "Down payment made in cash, $7,000. Where did he get $700,000 in cash? That's not typically something we investigate if the bills are legitimate." I studied the signature pages she printed. My forged signature showed telltale signs the tail of the Y in Avery curved wrong, and the spacing between letters was too uniform. Mason had traced it from something. "I need copies of everything," I said. "And I need to know if any other accounts have been opened using my information." Marla's search revealed 2 more attempts, a credit card application denied, and a personal line of credit pending. She flagged all accounts for fraud investigation and handed me a stack of papers. "Your mother was copied on the denial letters," she said quietly. "They went to the Shaker Heights address 3 months ago." 3 months. My mother had known for 3 months that Mason was committing identity theft, and she'd said nothing. I thought of her at the church, fumbling with glove boxes while Mason attacked me. The practiced blindness, the careful avoidance. She wasn't just enabling him, she was complicit. That evening, Rhea called with updates on the data room and something else. "I did some digging on Mason's company," she said. "Harrow & Sons Grading has been billing multiple organizations around town. The church renovation fund, the Rotary Club's park project, even the blood drive account at Tri-County Blood Services. He's been skimming from nonprofits. Worse, remember the construction crew that was supposed to fix the church's food pantry kitchen? They got paid half up front, never finished the work. Guess who collected the payment as the general contractor?" Mason wasn't just defrauding me and Northbridge. He was systematically stealing from the community organizations that kept Redwater functioning. The blood drive where he'd attacked me, he'd probably stolen from them too. "There's more," Rhea continued. "One of the construction workers came to the blood service looking for Mason last month. Said the crew hadn't been paid in weeks. Families were struggling. Someone covered their grocery bills anonymously to keep them afloat." "Who?" "Donation was cash, no name, but the timing." She paused. "It was right after the church kitchen job fell through. Someone in town was quietly cleaning up Mason's messes, keeping his victims from making noise. I had a sick feeling I knew who." I pulled up my mother's Facebook page. Photo after photo of church events, community dinners, blood drives, Lila Harrow, pillar of the community, in every picture. She stood slightly apart, smile not quite reaching her eyes. How much of her volunteer work was really damage control? How many people had she quietly paid off to protect Mason's reputation and, by extension, her own? The fraud ran deeper than forged signatures and fake invoices. It was a whole ecosystem of deception, with my mother as the cleanup crew and me as the unwitting co-signer who made it all possible. I added new items to my evidence log. Item 6. Multiple nonprofit organizations defrauded. Item 7. Pattern of non-payment to construction crews. Item 8. Mother's knowledge of fraud denial letters. Item 9. Anonymous payments, potentially constituting witness tampering. Tomorrow, I'd expand the investigation, contact the church, the Rotary Club, the blood service, find the construction workers who hadn't been paid, build a case that showed not just what Mason had done to me, but what he'd done to everyone. He'd punched me in a room full of witnesses, thinking public violence would ensure private compliance. He was about to learn how wrong he was. The smell hit me first, burnt plastic and charred rubber. Tuesday, 4:47 a.m. My phone shrieking with the alarm company alert. By the time I stumbled to my apartment's front door, smoke was already dissipating in the hallway, and my doormat was a melted black puddle on the concrete. My neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, stood in her robe holding a fire extinguisher. "I heard the smoke alarm and saw flames under your door. Use the building's extinguisher." The doormat had been doused with accelerant. The smell was unmistakable. Charred remnants of a plastic bottle lay nearby, partially melted but intact enough to preserve evidence. A small dark stain on the bottle cap caught my eye. In the early morning light, it looked like dried blood. "Did you see anyone?" I asked. A truck drove off fast when I came out. Big thing, dark color, like a recently purchased F-350. The fire department arrived within minutes, followed by police, the arson investigator. Lieutenant Rodriguez bagged the bottle carefully. "Accelerant fire at an apartment door is typically intimidation," he said. Someone wanting to send a message without necessarily burning the building down. You have any enemies? I handed him my case file number. My stepfather. He's under investigation for assault and fraud. Rodriguez's expression hardened. We'll test the bottle for prints and DNA. That stain could be blood. While firefighters verified the structure was safe, my phone buzzed. Unknown number again. Family justice doesn't need courts. Then another. Your brother's truck had an accident. Shame about his tires. My brother Evan lived across town. Worked nights at the hospital loading dock. I called him immediately. Someone slashed all 4 tires, he said, voice shaking. I came out from my shift and... Avery, what's going on? Mom called crying about Mason needing money. Stay away from Mason. File a police report. I'll pay for the tires. I can't afford to miss work. I'll handle it. Just document everything and stay safe. I screenshot the threatening texts, added them to the evidence folder. The timestamp showed they'd been sent while the fire department was still on scene. Mason was getting sloppy, desperate. At the police station, Lieutenant Rodriguez connected the dots quickly. Attempted arson following documented assault and fraud. These text messages constitute criminal threatening. We can arrest him now, but you want more, I finished. Something airtight. The bottle will take a few days to process. If we can match DNA or prints, connect it to the vehicle used, maybe find accelerant purchases. He's escalating, I pointed out. First financial fraud, then physical assault, now arson and threats. Which is why we're putting a patrol on your building and your brother's home. But Mason Harrow isn't stupid. He's been in the system before minor stuff, bar fights. He knows to wear gloves, pay cash, use burner phones. I thought of the blood droplet on the bottle cap. He's also getting reckless. ADA. Marcus Washington agreed when I updated him that afternoon. The texts were a mistake. Temporal proximity to the arson. Similar language pattern to his previous communications. But we need that forensic evidence to make it stick. What about a controlled interaction, I suggested. The blood drive is having a second event this weekend. Mason always shows up to maintain his community image. Washington leaned back. You're suggesting using a public charity event to execute a warrant. I'm suggesting we use his predictable behavior against him. He'll be there playing good citizen, probably trying to smooth over the assault from last time. If we can legally obtain a DNA sample. Blood donation requires consent forms, Washington mused. Legal chain of custody from the moment of collection. If he volunteers to donate. We spent the next hour crafting legal frameworks. Ohio law permitted DNA collection with proper warrants. The blood drive already had protocols for maintaining sample integrity. If Mason volunteered to donate, signed the forms, we could execute a limited biological warrant for comparison to crime scene evidence. You'll need the blood service's cooperation, Washington said. Rhea was way ahead of us. She'd already spoken to the Tri-County Blood Service director about Mason's fraud against their organization. They're furious, she reported. He billed them for $3,000 in site preparation for their mobile unit parking. Work was never done. They want him prosecuted. Will they cooperate with sample collection? The director said they'd follow any legal court order. Their phlebotomists are trained in chain of custody procedures for legal blood draws. They do DUI cases sometimes. The pieces were falling into place. Mason thought fire would make me back down, that threatening Evan would divide my focus. But every escalation just added charges, created evidence, revealed his desperation. I walked through my apartment that night, past the melted doorway and lingering smell of smoke. My shoulder still ached from his punch. My credit was damaged from his fraud. My family was fractured by his threats. But I had something Mason didn't understand: systematic patience. The same methodical approach I used to unravel medical billing fraud. I now applied to him, every text, every threat, every violent act, all documented, time-stamped, preserved. He'd drawn blood at the church. This Saturday, we'd draw it again. Only this time, it would be evidence. Thursday afternoon. We gathered in a conference room at the Fulton County Prosecutor's Office. Ada Washington, Lieutenant Rodriguez, Rhea, Marla Ortega from the Credit Union, and 2 representatives from the Ohio Medical Fraud Investigation Unit, a division I'd only heard about in compliance training. Operation Red Cross, Washington began, because prosecutors love naming things. Saturday's blood drive at St. Gabriel's. We'll have undercover officers positioned as volunteers and donors. 1 certified phlebotomist from the fraud unit will be embedded with the blood service staff. Detective Sarah Chen from the fraud unit laid out the protocol. Chain of custody begins the moment he signs the consent form. We'll have a mobile lab standing by to process initial markers blood type, basic genetic markers that can provide preliminary matching to crime scene evidence. The warrant, I asked. Judge Morrison signed it this morning. Washington slid papers across the table. Limited biological warrant for DNA comparison to evidence collected in the arson investigation. Executable only upon voluntary donation with signed consent. Rhea pulled up her laptop. I've coordinated with the Blood Service IT department. Their system will flag Mason's donation immediately, segregate it for legal custody. The whole process will look routine from the outside. What about my role? I asked. You'll be at the registration table, just like last time. Rodriguez's expression was serious. We expect Mason to show up for appearance's sake. If he sees you there, conducting business as usual, it reinforces that his intimidation isn't working. He'll probably try to provoke another confrontation, I said. We're counting on it. Every interaction will be recorded, multiple angles, including the church's security cameras, which mysteriously started working again after last week's malfunction. Marla spoke up. I'll have certified copies of all the fraudulent documents. If needed, I can provide real-time verification of signature forgeries. And I've prepared a presentation for the church board, I added. Just in case we need to stop the event for safety reasons, they should know what's happening in their space. Washington nodded. Father Miguel is already aware. He's horrified about the assault and the nonprofit fraud. He wants to, quote, cleanse his church of this darkness. We reviewed contingencies for 2 hours. What if Mason didn't show? Unlikely he needed the public appearance. What if he refused to donate his choice, but the attempt would be documented? What if he became violent, immediate arrest on existing warrants? One more thing, Detective Chen said. We've been investigating similar fraud patterns across 3 counties. Mason's name keeps appearing. This isn't his first identity theft scheme, just his most personal. Friday night, I met Rhea at her apartment to review the technical setup. She'd created a digital evidence package that would stream updates in real time to the prosecutor's office. Every signature, every timestamp, every interaction logged and verified, she said. If he signs that consent form, we'll have unbreakable documentation. What if he suspects something? Then he doesn't donate, and we proceed with the existing charges. But Avery, she pulled up Mason's social media. Look at this. Post after post about the upcoming blood drive, sharing the church's announcements, comments about supporting the community and giving back, even a photo of him holding last quarter's blood donor recognition certificate. He's committed to the performance, I said. He has to be. Word's getting out about the unpaid workers, the nonprofit theft. His reputation is crumbling. This blood drive is his chance to play hero again. I thought about my mother, probably ironing his best shirt for tomorrow, preparing his props for the Good Citizen Act. Did she know about the arson, the tire slashing, or had she convinced herself that willful blindness absolved her complicity? Your shoulder okay? Rhea asked. I rotated it carefully. Physical therapy helped. Doc says the documentation of medical treatment strengthens the assault case. My phone buzzed, unknown number, but I recognized the pattern. Drop the charges, last warning. I showed Rhea. She immediately screenshot it, uploaded it to our evidence server. Last warning, she repeated. He's telling us tomorrow matters to him. Good. When someone's desperate, they make mistakes. We ordered Chinese food and spent the evening reviewing Ohio DNA collection laws, chain of custody procedures, and the blood service's standard operating protocols. By midnight, we'd mapped every possible scenario. Saturday morning arrived gray and drizzling. Perfect weather for what felt like a funeral, the death of Mason's carefully constructed image. I dressed carefully, professional blazer to hide the shoulder brace. Same type of white button-down he'd torn last week, now perfectly pressed. Visible competence, quiet defiance. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Use Mason's need for public validation against him. Let his own blood convict him. Transform his performance of civic duty into evidence of his crimes. "Ready," Rhea texted. "Ready." I drove to St. Gabriel's, past the empty factories and struggling Main Street. In 12 hours, Mason Harrow would either be in custody or fled either way. Exposed. Time to roll up our sleeves. St. Gabriel's Hall buzzed with Saturday morning energy. Volunteers arranged cookies on paper plates while nurses calibrated equipment at donation stations. The smell of coffee and antiseptic felt oddly comforting. I took my position at the registration table, manila folders arranged precisely, hands steady despite the adrenaline. The undercover officers blended seamlessly, a retired teacher reading a newspaper, a young couple filling out forms, a maintenance worker checking ceiling tiles. Detective Chen wore scrubs and a Tri-County Blood Services badge, clipboard in hand, looking every inch the experienced phlebotomist. At 10:47 a.m., Mason's F-350 pulled into the church lot. He entered like he owned the place, wearing his newest flannel shirt and clean jeans. The gold pinky ring caught the fluorescent lights. Behind him, my mother carried a plate of homemade cookies, her contribution to the post-donation refreshment table. His eyes found me immediately. That familiar sneer twisted his features before he forced it into something resembling a smile. The good citizen mask, slightly cracked. "Morning, Avery." He approached the registration table with measured steps. "Surprised to see you here after last week." "I volunteer regularly." I kept my voice neutral, professional. "Would you like to register to donate?" "That's why I'm here. Supporting the community." He said it loud enough for nearby donors to hear. I slid the consent form across the table. Standard Red Cross paperwork, medical history. Consent for testing. Legal acknowledgments. Please read everything carefully and sign where indicated. Ma'am. He grabbed the pen, barely glancing at the text. That carelessness with documentation had enabled my investigation. He'd never learned that signatures have consequences. "Mason," my mother appeared at his shoulder. "Maybe you should..." "Should what?" "Lila not donate blood." His voice carried that dangerous edge. "Not support our community." She retreated to the refreshment table. Even here, surrounded by witnesses, she couldn't challenge him. Mason scrawled his signature across the consent form with characteristic aggression. The pen pressed so hard, it left indentations 3 sheets deep. "Happy now." He pushed the papers back at me. "Please proceed to Station 3. The phlebotomist will call you shortly." He leaned across the table, close enough that I could smell his coffee breath. "This isn't over." "No," I agreed quietly. "It's not." He stalked toward the donation stations. I paper-clipped his forms, noting the timestamp 10:53 a.m., chain of custody officially initiated. The next 20 minutes crawled by. I registered other donors, maintained normal operations, while hyper-aware of Mason's progress. He joked too loudly with the volunteer checking his blood pressure. Made comments about being strong as an ox during the hemoglobin test. "Mason Harrow." Detective Chen called from Station 3, her voice professionally pleasant. He strutted over, rolling up his sleeve with theatrical flair. "Let's do this. I donate every quarter, you know." "How wonderful. Please have a seat and relax." I watched peripherally as Chen followed perfect procedure. Verified identity against driver's license, confirmed consent signatures, prepared the collection bag with its pre-printed tracking labels. "Make a fist for me," she instructed, wrapping the tourniquet around his upper arm. That's when the first disruption occurred. A donation station alarm beeped someone feeling faint. Nurses responding quickly. The distraction drew attention away from Station 3, where Chen smoothly inserted the needle into Mason's arm. Blood flowed dark red through the tubing. She attached collection vials for standard testing, each labeled and barcoded, one extra vial, authorized by warrant, sealed immediately in an evidence bag, she palmed discreetly. Mason chatted through the process, boasting about his construction business, upcoming contracts, community involvement, every word recorded by multiple devices. "You know Avery Quinn?" he asked Chen, gesturing toward my table. "My stepdaughter, family disappointment." "I prefer to focus on the donation," Chen replied evenly. "She's got problems, mental health issues, makes up stories." His voice pitched louder, ensuring others heard. "Last week she claimed I hit her. Can you imagine, in a church?" The elderly woman from last week's incident looked up from her cookie. Her expression suggested she could imagine it quite well. "Almost done," Chen said, watching the collection bag reach capacity. That's when Mason noticed something wrong. Maybe it was Chen's too careful handling of the vials. Maybe the subtle positioning of observers around the room. His face shifted from performed relaxation to animal alertness. "What's really going on here?" "Just completing your donation, sir. You're doing great." He started to stand. Chen's hand pressed firmly on his shoulder, proper phlebotomist technique to prevent injury. Nothing more. "Please remain seated until I remove the needle, for your safety." The words "remain seated" triggered something. His free hand clenched. The good citizen mask slipped completely. "You set me up, you little—" He yanked his arm, still connected to the collection tube. "Sir, please don't move. Let me disconnect you safely." He shoved the donation chair back, needle tearing free, blood spattered across the white floor. Someone screamed. He lunged toward my registration table, rage overtaking reason. "You think you're smart? You think you can—" He grabbed a folding chair, raised it overhead. I stood frozen, shoulders screaming with memory of the last blow. But this time, I wasn't alone. The retired teacher tackled him from behind. The young couple flanked his sides. In seconds, Mason Harrow was on the linoleum floor, hands pinned, Miranda rights echoing through the church hall. "You're under arrest for assault, attempted arson, fraud, and criminal threatening." Blood from his torn IV dripped onto the white floor. His blood, properly collected, legally documented, chain of custody intact. The needle had done its work. Even as Mason thrashed against the officer's grip, the collection tube sealed with his blood began its journey through the legal system. Detective Chen secured the evidence vials in a locked cooler, each one tagged with chain of custody documentation that started the moment he'd signed the consent form. "That blood was obtained illegally," Mason shouted. "I want a lawyer." "You voluntarily donated blood after signing consent forms," Lieutenant Rodriguez stated calmly. Multiple witnesses observed the entire process. The mobile forensics unit had set up in the church parking lot. Within an hour, preliminary markers confirmed what we'd suspected. Blood type and basic genetic markers matched the sample from the arson bottle cap. Not conclusive yet, but enough for probable cause. Inside the church hall, the blood drive continued. Father Miguel had addressed the congregation briefly, asking for calm and prayers for truth and justice. Most donors stayed, perhaps sensing they were part of something larger than a typical Saturday charity event. Marla Ortega approached my registration table with a manila envelope. "As requested," she said quietly. I opened it to reveal the loan documents, laid them side by side on the table. My authentic signature from an old rental agreement, the forged signatures on Mason's loans, even to untrained eyes. The differences were obvious. May I, Ada Washington appeared beside us, digital tablet in hand. "Please." He photographed each document, uploading them to the case file in real time. "Ms. Ortega, would you be willing to provide expert testimony about these forgeries?" "I've already prepared my analysis," she said. 23 years in banking. I've seen every type of signature fraud. This is textbook traced forgery." Across the room, my mother sat alone at the refreshment table. The cookies she'd brought remained untouched. She stared at the spot where Mason had bled on the floor, face unreadable. I approached slowly. "Mom?" She didn't look up. "I told him not to come today." "Did you know about the loans?" A long pause. "The denial letters came to the house. I thought if I paid off the workers he'd hired, kept things quiet, maybe he'd stop." "You knew he was using my name." "He said it was temporary, just until the business got established." Her voice cracked. He promised a lot of things." I sat beside her. "The police need to know about the payments you made. It's witness tampering. But if you cooperate—" "I kept receipts." The words came out in a whisper. "Every payment to every worker he stiffed, every charity I reimbursed, it's all in a safety deposit box at River and Pike. I thought someday I might need proof." My mother, the enabler, my mother, the secret documentarian. We were more alike than I'd wanted to admit. Detective Chen returned from the mobile lab, pulling off latex gloves. "Preliminary DNA markers are a match. Full analysis will take 48 hours, but the blood evidence is solid." She handed me a receipt, official documentation that the blood evidence had been properly collected and transferred. Every step legal, every form signed by Mason himself. "Your stepfather's truck is being impounded," Rodriguez added. "We found accelerant residue in the bed. Same chemical composition as the arson scene. He didn't even clean it out." Outside, Mason sat in the back of a patrol car, hands cuffed behind his back. His shirt showed spreading bloodstains from the IV tear. He stared at me through the window, face twisted with rage, and something else, disbelief that his intimidation tactics had failed. Rhea emerged from the church's AV room. All video archived and authenticated. Multiple angles of both assaults. The church's insurance company will be very interested in this footage. "What about Northbridge?" I asked. "Corporate legal is prepared. The fraudulent invoices alone constitute felony wire fraud. They're cooperating fully with federal investigators." The scope of Mason's downfall expanded with each passing minute. Local assault charges, federal fraud indictments, arson and intimidation, identity theft crossing state lines. The blood evidence would cement the arson charge, linking him forensically to the bottle at my door. "Avery," Father Miguel approached. "I wanted to apologize. We should have intervened last week when he struck you. Our silence enabled—" "You're not silent now," I said. "That matters." The blood drive concluded at 2 p.m. Final tally: 43 successful donations, 1 arrest, and a community that had finally seen Mason Harrow's true nature. As volunteers cleaned up, I sat at the registration table completing paperwork. Proper documentation to the end. Each consent form filed, each timestamp recorded. The blood Mason donated would go to forensic analysis instead of saving lives. But in a way, it was still serving the community by removing a predator from their midst. The evidence chain was complete. From the consent form, he signed carelessly to the needle that drew his blood to the forensic match that would convict him. He'd rolled up his sleeve thinking he controlled the narrative. He never saw who truly held the needle. The handcuffs clicked around Mason's wrists with a sound like justice finally finding its rhythm. He stood there between the blood donation stations, still dripping from where he'd torn the IV free, surrounded by the same witnesses who'd watched him hit me just 1 week before. Detective Chen held up the evidence bag containing his blood sample. "Mr. Mason Harrow, you're under arrest for assault and battery, attempted arson, wire fraud, identity theft, and criminal threatening." "You can't use that blood," he sputtered, but even he didn't sound convinced anymore. "Sir, you voluntarily signed consent forms authorizing blood collection and testing. Multiple witnesses observed the entire process." Rodriguez's voice carried the weight of 20 years in law enforcement. "Your donation today matched DNA evidence from the arson at Ms. Quinn's residence." I stood by the registration table, my torn shirt from last week's assault now evidence in a file, replaced by a crisp white button-down that would never be torn by his hands again. My shoulder still ached, but I kept it straight. $47,000, I said clearly, my voice carrying across the silent church hall. That's how much you stole using my forged signature. 3 nonprofit organizations defrauded. 6 construction workers left unpaid. 1 identity destroyed, or so you thought. I pulled out the evidence folder, thick with documentation. Every invoice, every forged document, every threatening text, time-stamped, verified, and backed up in triplicate. You taught me something valuable. Mason, you taught me that family can be the deepest betrayal. But you forgot what I do for a living. I investigate fraud, I document lies, and I'm very, very good at my job. My mother stood by the refreshment table, tears streaming down her face, but for once, she didn't look away. She met my eyes and nodded small, but significant. Mrs. Harrow, Ada Washington addressed her formally. We'll need your cooperation regarding the witness tampering payments. Your safety deposit box documents could help the workers recover their wages. I'll provide everything, she whispered. As the officers led Mason toward the exit, he twisted back one last time. You destroyed this family. No, I said. You did that yourself. I just documented it. The church hall erupted in quiet conversation as the patrol car pulled away. Volunteers resumed cleaning up. Donors finished their juice and cookies. The blood drive continued, serving its actual purpose, saving lives, not destroying them. Marla Ortega approached with a smile. The credit union's fraud department will reverse all the unauthorized charges. Your credit will be restored within 90 days. Rhea appeared with her tablet. The full evidence package is uploaded to the prosecutor's secure server. Every email, every timestamp, every piece of digital evidence preserved. What about the workers? I asked. The prosecutor's office has a victim restitution fund. With your mother's documentation and Mason's assets frozen, they should recover most of their wages. Father Miguel blessed the remaining blood donations, adding a special prayer for truth and justice. The elderly woman who'd witnessed both assaults patted my good shoulder as she left. You did the right thing, dear. Sometimes family isn't who shares your blood. It's who stands beside you when you need them most. I looked around the church hall. Detective Chen packing up evidence, Rodriguez filing reports, Washington preparing indictments, Rhea backing up data, Marla protecting my finances, even my mother, finally choosing truth over enabling. This was my real family, the ones who helped me roll up my sleeves and fight back. 6 months later, Mason Harrow was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison for wire fraud, plus concurrent state sentences for assault, arson, and identity theft. The construction workers received full restitution. The nonprofits recovered their funds. My credit score rebounded higher than before. I still volunteer at the quarterly blood drives. Same registration table, same careful documentation. But now when I roll up my sleeves, I see only fading scars and the knowledge that sometimes the best revenge isn't dramatic or violent. Sometimes it's just paperwork, properly filed. Sometimes justice flows as quietly as blood through a needle, collected drop by drop until the evidence is overwhelming. And sometimes, when someone tries to beat you down in a public place, thinking shame will silence you. Sometimes the most powerful response is simply to return the next week, sit at the same table, and show them that you cannot be broken. The blood drive at St. Gabriel's continues to serve Redwater, Ohio. We've never had another incident, but we did update one policy. Background checks are now required for all major donors. After all, you never know who might roll up their sleeves. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop a comment below, and let's connect about what this story meant to you. If this resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. And if you really want to help others discover this story, hit that hype button to boost it so more people can hear about justice served cold, one drop at a time.